Thank you so much for spending the time and effort. It's been great chatting to you. It's been great with some of the engagements, certainly on the different types of data modeling, and that's what we need to do and we need to learn. So all yours, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you for having me back. So yeah, I'm rather excited to tell this story, but at the same time, it's the first time I'm telling this story. So it's kind of interesting to see where this goes to, and it takes me a little bit out of my comfort zone. So if you see me tense up because there's the new slide there, you now understand where this is coming from. I'm hoping to actually get some engagements with you guys. So for all of you who didn't get the reference, it's a reference that's from the movie The Matrix. And I find it great that because we all have this kind of virtual job. We work with data, and it's not very tangible. It's somewhere in the computer. The things that we do is a lot of stuff in our head, and everybody has a different outlook on data. So I thought maybe talk about no data in line with the virtual world that we manifest ourselves in. I'm going to start off with a slide referencing the culture map, because we have a wide range of people in these sessions. Europe, South Africa, we've had Australians, we have Canada, so all over the place. And I'm now a little more than 4 years in a relationship with an American girlfriend, and we discovered this book, and it is mind-blowing.
Sorry, Marco.
Yes.
Was that a marriage counseling book or?
Sorry, is that on what book?
Was it a marriage counseling book?
No, but it would have been so much easier if we had read this book beforehand, because in a way, I speak English, no problem there, but culture doesn't translate in language. So, a lot of things that you can say in English, if you read them and translate that in your head to your own native tongue, then you think you kind of got it, but the culture map is trip. And then I just wanted to point out two perspectives that you can have. You have a scale of application-based or theory-based approach on how to handle problems and how to execute work. Some cultures are really down to earth, let's get things done, and where other cultures will try to solve the problem from, okay, how should it work and how should we approach this? So that's more theory based. And this talk is going to be a little bit more holistic based, which is neither, and it's a little bit of a third one out. And so let me introduce myself by saying that I am not Marco Wobben. You may recognize that there's data in this statement, and I am not data, and I'm not just my name either. So, and everybody who gets that question will realize that, we introduce ourselves usually by saying I am, and then comes a name, but that's usually not the case. So this is just a small hint to our own existential crisis. Who am I? And that starts at a very young age. As soon as you're a kid, you want to be cool and you want to be this teenager. And then as soon as then you reach the age of teenagers, then I just really want to be a little stronger. I want to do things. There's this desire and drive to, and natural evolvement to becoming this adult. As soon as I'm 18, I can drink or whatever. Just these constant desires to the future. And I'm not sure, actually, I didn't talk with Howard about this desire, but once we're an adult, then, we all just want to be a cat. So there's always something to long for, and that pulls us out of our current state of being. And there's always this grass is greener at the other side, and that's just human nature. Now you may think, okay, where does that lead to into IT? And I'll get to that. But by constantly looking what we don't have and looking forward, we kind of get blindsided by the things that are actually currently going on, or if we're not historically aware where we came from. And that leads to a certain disconnect. And for the people wondering if this is Photoshop, no, this is actually a little cropped photo of a mirage. Is that the atmosphere and the heat differences bent the light, so you can actually see the ship, but you can't see that it actually is in the ocean. And these things, you know, it's a metaphor for things that happen in our profession as well, because we can see things, but we don't always see how they are connected. So now I'm going to dive a little bit into the information aspects that we have to deal with in IT. Is that early society, a lot of manual information was processed and transferred, a lot of mouth to mouth. And society, as you will know, evolved, and there was a technical revolution which basically created the information to be mechanical of nature. The pipes and the low pressure, high pressure, moving messages through banks and offices, all great stuff. And, you know, we evolved further, and this will be no surprise, the digital revolution, which now has electronic information. And I'm going to slide a little bit on my scroll bar here so I can actually see what's coming up. And to make these electronic informations executable, we need rules. Information needs rules. It needs structure. It needs requirements, all of that. Now, the interesting part is that rules are made by humans. And this is a picture from an Asian parliament where they, you know, in arguments, they tend to fight it out, which is quite normal. And, you know, these people make rules and laws and regulations. And, you know, your government may be a little bit more sophisticated, but the human nature is still there. And then we rely on experts on these rules. They interpret the law and they deal with ambiguity, because politics, making laws, is usually about how do we deal with disagreement, and then we usually tend to write it down in a nebulous way, in an abstract way, or leave loopholes within the set of laws. And we need these experts to then, you know, decide what needs to be done. And the interesting part is, even with the experts, we are all supposed to know what the rules are, and, you know, what could possibly go wrong. And again, human nature, it's an interesting feat. And you can imagine that once you move on and say, okay, well, we had machines and electronic information, then these rules that we all built are running in the machines. And again, what could possibly go wrong? And this is a movie reference to the Space Odyssey 2001. Great movie, cult classic. If you have not seen it, please enlighten yourself. The computer definitely does not play according to the rules implied by humans. So I'm actually quite curious at this point of what has you, the audience and listeners and visitors to this meetup, occupied. So I would like to invite you to, and I can share a different screen. If you quickly do a QR code, you will get there, and otherwise I'll have to switch my sharing. Let me see if I can make that happen here. And then everybody can actually see what the outcome is at the same time. So let's go there and move over to this screen. It will give you the same page, and I'm very interested to hear what has you occupied in your job at this moment before we continue with the presentation. Okay, so there's a lot of data modeling and a lot of data management. Okay, cool. Data management, architecture. Definitely a lot of data, not so much data science. Nice to see these bars move while everybody punches in their votes.
It really is. It's very cool, like how it changes the whole time with it. Very cool.
So I didn't count the amount of participants. So let's quickly see.
So we on I think it's about 30.
Wow. Okay. So we can give it a few minutes, and then I was just curious to see what would happen here. Now this raises the question: what is the something else? Isn't this to be about data? But yeah, something else can be anything.
People, business.
Right, worries about the vaccine, or what did I eat this morning because I don't feel so well. It can be anything.
So should we put, if we were doing business intelligence or decision making, should that go into data science?
Ah, good question. Since it didn't start with data, I kind of skipped that one because there's so AI and machine learning. So these are probably all the something else.
Right, that's where
all the
I'm.
terminology that doesn't start with data. Yes, well, good. The majority is covering the topics that Dama covers as well. So that's good. It's good. It's not like everybody voted for something else. That's cool. Okay, I'm gonna go back to my slideshow. This was fun to do. Let's see. Can I go back to my presentation window? Yep, there we go. So as you can see, the scale kind of cover all the different data topics, and so there's clearly something that is not seen, and we rarely see the whole picture because we always have this limited view on life, on job, on problems, on solutions, and whatever else more. So the question that I would like to raise is, how does that happen? And of course, our brains are too limited to capture the whole Wikipedia. But I'm going to make it a little bit more personal in a way that, and this telephone game is an illustration to that. The person in the green shirt has this full sentence on what his order is at the Mexican restaurant, and at the end it comes out is the cowbell house. So and something gets lost in this process, in this progress of information processing, and that has something to do with the audio and the quality of the room, etc., etc. But also there's something else going on, and it points to our own computer that's inside of our head called the brain. And I wanted to just show this little clip, and again I'm going to take 2 minutes to let you absorb this. Click.
Small scale, and you'll shade in with a coloured pen those sides there, making sure that it's exactly the same on each side. There we are. Now, whichever way you look at that, your brain will tell you that the long end is nearer to you. Now, it is nearer to you now, but now I'll put it back near my body. Now it's nearer to me, but it still looks as if it's nearer you, doesn't it? Because you're used to seeing things bigger when they are closer to you. Now, here's the spinning motor. It's simply a piece of cotton thread tied to this corner and tied to the other corner, and I've wound it around in my fingers so that when I let it go in a moment, it'll unwind, the thread will unwind, and you'll see the thing spinning. There we are. I'll hold it at the same level as your eyes, and we'll let it go. Now, you know that it's turning around in circles. In fact, if you look at it from above, you can see that it's turning around in a circle. But now your brain is doing something strange. It's telling you that it's not going around in a circle, but it's oscillating. In other words, it's part way, stopping, and then going back the other way. that's a strange effect, isn't it? But if you think that's strange, wait till I add something through the middle. What am I going to add? Well, I'm going to add a ballpoint pen. And to do that, I've placed a little piece of double-sided sticky tape on the ballpoint pen. You can use ordinary sticky tape if you like. I'll place it right through the centre of the window and press it in place like that. Now this time, by fixing on the pen, you'll be able to see that the pen is going around in a circle and not going backwards and forwards. But what's your brain going to tell you about the window? Will your brain allow you to see the window going around in a circle with the pen? Or are you going to see something really strange? Well, have a look at that. That's unbelievable, isn't it? You can see the pen going around in a circle, but your brain is telling you that the window is going part way round and turning and going the other way. And yet in order to do that, the two things have to pass through one another, the pen and the window. You know it's not possible. You know it can't happen. And yet as you look at it, you see them going through one another every time they go around. An amazing illusion, the Ames window. And I think you're going to have a lot of fun making your own.
Well, just a little presentation on what's happened. I personally find it mind-blowing because it actually shows the glitches that we all have to deal with on a daily basis, and it's way beyond the culture map. This is not about, do I still speak the language? Do I, there are glitches because our perceptions are off in many cases. So there's a disconnect going on clearly, because there is something that we consider reality, and then we have our senses, our audio visual input, and in our brain we built this illusion which is representing what we perceive as reality. And this allows us to think about these concepts that are inside of our brain, inside of our illusion, handle those with thought, and we can actually act as human beings. If I want peanut butter, I don't have any on my shelf, which I observe, and I still want peanut butter, I will have to take action and go to the store to get peanut butter. So it's a very practical tool, but consider again that the data in itself is a virtual world. We're using tools, and all of that is going on in our brains. And basically what happens is that we are what we call, we're vehicles that fly by wire. Fly by wire is the new term where we tell the computer what we want to do. In other words, we give it input, and the computer does something and performs action. And basically our consciousness is in a similar state of being. We have senses, but there's a disconnect between what goes in our system and how we act on it. And these views on what's happening inside us gives us a few handles on what's going on. So now we're working in IT. We have tools, all cool, and the thing is, we kind of get captured by these tools, and this may look like a great drill. I mean, it looks cool, it's nicely, it's small, and it does its work. But the mistake that many people make is that I need a drill because I need to drill holes, and there's again the misconception, because I don't have a drill at home to make holes. The ultimate goal is not to have my house full of holes. The actual goal is to hang something up the wall. Now, take again this metaphor as how does that work in the workplace? We have all these cool tools, we have methods, we have diagramming notations, all of that, but what is the real purpose that it serves? And we sometimes get blinded by the tool and the technology that we have to work with or can work with. So let's go through some of those tools. And I hope that by showing lots of them, and some of them outside of your realm of knowing, you will see a common thread that's going on. So one of them, let's see, the organization that we work with is more than just the sum of its parts. So what could we consider as parts? Let's look up a few diagramming notations. It started very early on with the Chen entity relationship diagramming. It has entity patient, and then it has an attribute, and it has a relationship, and some of them have different annotations, but it's basically giving you almost an atom layer insight in how information is built and assembled. And another example came from the Netherlands is the method called NIAM. It is a binary notation again, and it is, and I won't explain all the diagram notations because you'll have to figure it out. It's too much to talk about it in such a short amount of time, but it breaks down according to similar structures. More modern is what you can find online as anchor modeling. It also uses these elementary building blocks, and if you would compare it to the ER diagramming, this notation adds time dimensions to how does the data change that you want to capture and support. Graph models, or hopefully all well known as graph databases. It can connect anything with anything. And again, there's a graphical representation of how these nodes and how these relations are all connected, all based on the similar parts. But as I said, the organization is more than its parts. Sometimes we can use components. The parts are already pre-assembled, and let's look at a few of those presentations. There's the relational model. It pulls attributes into rectangles and calls them tables. And yeah, there's a relationship in between tables, and we call them foreign keys. We can even annotate that, but basically these are components that can be used and reused. And I was not supposed to talk about UML, but there's the slide. To visualize object-oriented programming languages and vice versa, to be able to diagram some sort of UML class diagram, it helps to further implement object-oriented programming languages according to the structure as designed. But basically, again, there are components that you use and reuse, hopefully reuse. And then there are more textual-based techniques. And I took this picture. It's more than the manual, because once you have described it, you still need to do something with it. So one of the things is the description in a business glossary. We have all the terms in our business. We have the definitions with it. Hopefully, we also have some sort of relationship description there. It's just one of the more textual-based ways of writing things down. The SBVR, I recently saw a presentation by Ron Ross, who's very active in this, did this domain and written some books. It's a verbal way of describing a standard business vocabulary and rules for categorization and classification of all kinds of terms in the organization. More technical of nature is the semantic web, the web ontology language. Here is a graphical representation of a part of a larger model, but it's also in nature very, very verbal. It's based on an XML notation or a variation of that, defining in text how things are related, and that can be graphically displayed. And yeah, I didn't put BI on the questionnaire. But then you have the dashboards, which are more focused on how do we want to look at data. And that's usually far away from the technology. So if you're going into an organization and you have no idea about the domain, you want to do free format inventory of concepts. So one of the things that you can use is a concept map, simply graphical annotations of the terms and concepts that you may find, and that they are loosely connected somehow. More technical in nature again is the data catalog. Instead of documenting everything by hand, you'll set the system loose on every data source that is in your organization, and it builds a catalog from that actual implementation. Again, a different way of presenting information. The BPMN, less data driven. It's more about how do we as an organization want to work, according to which procedure and which processes. And this diagram notation actually shows how to go through the various stages of workflow. And somewhere is a line that says, and within this process step, you actually use this piece of data. But it's very much oriented to the organization itself on how do we want to work with that. The ensemble modeling, I think Christian has Remco Broekmans from Ensemble Modeling soon, who will do a presentation on this, and he will also do another training very soon after this, which is more geared toward enterprise data warehousing. It's trying to find the core business concepts, which are the relationships, and relationships in this matter are more based on actual transactions. So a customer purchases a product is being sold, the more the activity that it mixes in this notation. There's another one, very interesting, the BEAM modeling, business event analysis and modeling. It asks the when, how, who, where, why, what questions to be able to design the data warehouse more in the areas of what data marts need to be built, and you can do this on a business expert level. It doesn't require much technical insight. And then we have the organization that is surrounding the science of facts. And, you know, I would not be here if I didn't have some involvement in this area. There are so many technologies out there, so many methods, and then still we have to work with the facts that are in the organization and have how to process that with our brains. There are currently two flavors of fact-oriented modeling, which is the object role modeling that you see depicted here. When there was some serious discussion, it uses first-order predicate logic to come up with these information models. And then we have its competitor, if you will, which is the fully communication-oriented information modeling method. And this one uses natural language and concrete examples, entirely different approach to reach a similar information model. And these are very usable because they use facts and are very well expressed in language. Now, having seen all of that, we still need to figure out, certainly in larger organizations, how to put all of that together into one organization. Yes, we do dashboards. Yes, we do UML. Yes, we do ER modeling. Hopefully, maybe even some fact-oriented modeling. And we have business rules, and then we have to put the data warehouse in. All of that needs to work together. So it's not just let's do UML and we'll conquer the world. It just doesn't work like that. So questions, and I've heard a lot about the W's and H's, and these are seemingly simple questions, but they can be very hard to answer. As soon as you have an answer, the more you will have to ask. So every answer leads to a new question. So how to approach all of those different areas? So, you know, there's a Mr. Zachman who built the Zachman framework. Very cool. The how, the what, the where, the who, the when, the why, all of that. And then on different levels in the organization. Usable. It helps to organize the different techniques and tools that are out there. And of course, there's the Open Group Architecture Framework, TOGAF. It's an architecture which in its current version is very extendable, so you can incorporate your own method of working in the architecture that they lay out as a framework. Hopefully well known to all of you. When it comes specifically to data, the DEMBOK wheel, it's all the information that is about the architecture, the quality, the metadata. And again, it's a manifest that gives you handles on how to handle all the different areas that are related to data. And there are some newer trends coming up. In the Netherlands, there's the data quadrant model, which, this is a nutshell that says, well, we want to have facts which are very rigid and well-defined so that we can have quality of work and reproducible work and automated work. And then we have the ad hoc data, and we have the more data science. Let's see what we can pull out of that. And these two dimensions put that together. There's a push and a pull, and the systematic and opportunistic. There's a lot of insight in this data quadrant model, which again, like UML, I'm not going to explain it. I just want to mention it. It is a way of working. If you dig into that very detailed, if you actually have the data that has to move from one place to another in the organization, this almost labyrinth will help you think about the various contexts that are involved in all those little steps, from moving data, defining data, cleaning data, etc., etc., etc. This is something that I actually have a copy at home, and occasionally we pull it out at Christmas for the whole family. We study this. It's great material. From my own product roadmap, I wrote down how things are related, as well as static data, as how does the organization work with data. We have our sources. We built glossaries. We distill facts from that. We built derivation rules and constraints around that. And hopefully, we built the business transactions to support workflow. We have authorization on all these levels. We have various information domains that need to be categorized. We have the organization dealing with all of that. And last but not least, governance on the whole area. So again, it's a different approach on how to deal with data, how to deal with whatever we have to do in IT to make all of that work. But tying it back to our brain and our blind spots, because we're constantly looking at how can we apply what we know, and how can we apply what this new tool or new vendor is promising, and how can we use existing methods and technologies. And at the same time, we should be fully aware that we're blindsided. We don't see the whole picture. And again, taking from the movie The Matrix, red or blue. The reality is that we do things by hand a lot. And again, we do the UML diagram, and then by the time we have it pushed into a data warehouse, we have done a lot of manual work. We have done the mapping again, we have designed the database somewhere, and yes, we are using automation tools, but still the information that goes from one place to another is being checked, it's being developed, it's being tested. There's a lot of repeated manual labor. And with that, I would like to point out this little cartoon, probably well known by a lot of people, is we have blindfolded our IT staff, and everybody's looking at this creature, and everybody sees something else. The spear, a fan, a snake, a tree, a wall, and yet looking from outside is, wait a minute, there is this elephant. So a similar quest can be done on IT in general. So I'm just going to put out another little question here, because I'm a little curious. what you at this point hopefully realize that there's something going on that we can't quite see. And I'm wondering if you have any idea where I am getting at. So I'm going to switch to another slide and screen and go back to the, let's see if I can make that work. Click here, go there, and then share the screen. I'm going to pull you back into the Mentimeter for a few minutes again. And you can leave some tags that you think is unseen. Oh, the white space. I like that one. I feel another presentation coming up, Howard.
Yeah, we've had some chats on the white space, haven't we?
Yes, yes. Politics, also good. Power. It's starting to spread equally thin. This is interesting. Everybody sees something else as unseen. In itself, it's a nice illustration of what we as humans do. So we got 7 votes. I'll give it some time. We had 20 on the previous. Unless everybody bailed on me already. I hope not.
Still coming.
No. Everybody's still there. So, innovation. Oh, big one. Intention, efforts. Ooh, I like that one. It goes unseen what is not here. Yes. Very, very holistic and mystical. Gravity is funny. I'm interested to see if something will come up, what I think is missing. This is interesting. I may actually tell something new here then. Forest and the trees, yes, definitely. Interpretation is closed. It is a nice tag cloud. This is interesting. Meaning nuance. Dark work. Anybody want to elaborate what dark work would represent?
Let's say the data specialist who is always explaining again what the data is.
Ah, is that the dark work?
Well, my interpretation.
Okay. Okay, good one. I was wondering if you actually gave the tags. Interesting. It's just what comes up is as big as this effort, process, innovation, and intention. Intention is a good one. That is always hard to quantify because we all intend to do good, but doesn't always work out that way on the receiving end. Effort. Okay, I'll. There's still people voting. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I can't vote again. That's a pity.
No,
you had to keep typing on the same screen now.
But I will share the outcome afterwards. It's no worry. You don't have to copy it.
I miss my perception.
Yeah.
Always goes unseen.
Yes. Okay, let's pull back to the presentation and continue with some more slides here. Interesting. The presentation. Here you go. Yes, that was the unseen slide. Let's go. Okay, so there's a disconnect. I mentioned it before in my slide. We can sometimes see the ship, and we don't always know how it connects to the ocean. And this metaphor is applicable to the domain expert who doesn't quite understand UML. There is everybody who has an expertise is absorbed by that view on reality, that their own illusion on what reality is, with all the mishaps and miscommunications, etc., etc. And so in between every, so you will, domain of expertise, there is a chance of miscommunication. If you're doing UML classes to do the software design, how are you sure that you're understanding the brain surgeon's work that needs to be documented somewhere? How do you know that if you're the DBA, that the actual logical diagram is actually correct? And if you don't know how to read DER and only are there for the system administrative parts. So constant questions, and with every domain crossed, you will introduce some telephone game communication error. And so I'm going to point out that we're no longer talking about just data, not just data management, not just data quality, not just data modeling, because there is simply more to communication than just talk about data. And Ron Ross put it nicely in a way that, and you will find many quotes, if you will. The quality of data can never be any better than the quality of the communication that produced it, and not just produced it, but also moved it, migrated it, remodeled it, typed it in again, did another diagram. All of those things tie back to the quality. And bear in mind that our computer in our minds, in our brain, is under the influence of making mistakes easily. So what, and I've borrowed these from other presentations, is where we really need to emphasize more on is if people work and use, I'm referencing back to the earlier slides. When there was manual information, then there was mechanical information, now there's electronic information, but they all serve the purpose of communicating between people. Even if I go to the web shop, I'm receiving an email, and I can view that as, okay, that's an email. I can view that as data, but the real communication that's going on is that somebody on the other end of the line says, we have received your order. Yes, we have received your payment, and this is the information that we have, and it's now being sent to you through this organization, and you might receive it on this and this day. All of that is communication. It's not just data that is being processed. And this kind of communication needs, is missing in between the different domains of expertise. Unless I know how to read a UML class diagram, I will not know what it communicates. And it is, for me, it's nearly impossible to understand every technique and every method and every tool. So I constantly need to search, what does it communicate? But also, if somebody wants to present something to me, they need to communicate to me, and preferably in my language, so I can actually understand. So this is where the UML, and we don't want to do everything in UML, comes from, because that's just one language. And to line all of those different languages out, and these happen in the business area too, we need to figure out what is a shared common language. And we can decide that it's English, doesn't matter. But then across different domains, there's a shared domain language. The sales and the production department actually have to overlap somewhere on the inventory part, or on the actual creation of products, manufacturing, with their shared domain language. And then we have very domain specific languages like quality control that simply does measurements, have their own requirements, just do statistical testing of product lines. They may have their own language that doesn't necessarily influence sales. And these different languages all serve the information processing and the communication. And there are methods to do to start from human communication. into actually connecting it to system implementation. And that is what is called a vertical data architecture, where you write down how the rules are, starting even from the way of laws. And currently at the tax department in the Netherlands, they're doing this kind of architecture. They're analyzing and annotating laws all the way down to actual formal specification for system implementation, and have that vertical lineage all across the different domains and expertises. And for the mere fact that they all serve the same goal, for you to pay taxes in the right amount and nothing less, and nothing more as well. And if the law changed, then they need to track down through the entire tax department and all of the systems and all of the data, what does this behold? How do we need to adjust the systems? And looking at a system, if I have a form, be able to pinpoint how that number is being calculated all the way back to the law. That requires a lot of information processing, but it all serves the same purpose of communication. Because, again, from a communication perspective, we as a society want to contribute, we want to pay tax. How do I make sure that I pay the right amount? And this is communication. It is not just data. And then we have different loops around all of these different vertical architectures. Like, okay, how do I communicate about the data? How do I communicate about the data models that I have? How do I communicate about the system that I have? And the actual communication about the data is one of the areas that is called, what I call open space. So there's a huge gap there. City architects design open spaces in city for people to relax and do whatever they want to do. So city architecture is a lot about, okay, which space do we fill in and which space do we leave open? In IT, that role is almost entirely gone. We built systems, period. And there's hardly any room to actually have people work with the data, with the system in a more flexible way. And I'm almost at the end of my presentation in this respect, is that when it comes down to understanding and communicating and information, it is very, very important to always listen. And as you can sometimes see on LinkedIn discussions, that some people really just want to talk and they don't listen to what the receiving end is really interested in or does not understand. And I would actually press it upon you guys to look outside of your domain expertise and look at others as experts in their domain and try to listen to what they're trying to communicate and what they need on an information level. So I don't know if there is any questions in this. I'm going to go back to the Howard.
Yeah, we don't have any questions in the chat box, but I'm sure people have questions that they'd like to ask you. So guys, if you wouldn't mind raising your hands, and we'll try to channel the questions. Anybody would like to ask a question about what Marco has presented?
Now, I'm fully aware that I made a holistic presentation, which in my personal view, asking a question is also answering it. So even if I just made you think or look at our profession slightly different, then that is already an answer. So I can understand that there is no real concrete question in this respect.
So maybe I could start the ball rolling, Mark, and we've had the question following us for a while, almost in terms of and I liked your vertical flow and decomposition, or that at the end, that we do spend a lot of time trying to get people to understand, or business domain experts to understand UML. And I think whatever. It's not just UML, it's whatever technique we use to I think you had, if I remember correctly, there was a communicate and then formalize, and there was the next level where we create the model.
Right.
and a lot of the times we're trying to gather the data by pushing that model up towards them.
Yes. Well, and again, it's just. Shall I put up the slide just to support your remark there? This is the picture I had. So this is just basically the vertical architecture, and you could consider that the node. And then you have the data in movement, which is the horizontal architectures. How how do I put it here? How do I put it together here? How do I analyze it there? And how do I report it there? Which is the horizontal layers.
Right.
And both of them need to come together.
Yeah.
And all of those, and it's kind of like the drill. It's not sufficient to make it work. They need to serve the goal of why do we need this hole?
Yeah.
It is decision support, as somebody posted on the internet. It's like, data warehouses, data mesh, all of that, data lake, all cool. But what is the goal that it actually serves? Yeah. And it's to make better informed decisions as an organization. Yeah. And how can we make that process more efficient and more clear, more accurate? And then it basically is the hard work of aligning the horizontal and vertical architecture, so that wherever we are in the organization or look at data or whatever, that we can almost instantly know this is what it is communicating. This is the information that we're looking at.
Yes, so if we look at this one, we start talking to the business. That's the informal communication. So if we think there's a level of business analysis that's happening there, we're trying to understand what it is that they want or they need. And we then have the challenge of creating a specification or a definition of what we've understood to be the rules that you've spoken about. And we sort of then come down to a logical model, and we try to get the business to sign off and understand and work from the logical model, whatever it is, be it a UML diagram, be it an ER diagram, be it whatever it is. We sort of try to pick that fourth layer and then get them to interact at that fourth layer. Right. And we battle. We don't succeed a lot of times in going there. Now, should we be asking them to interact with the formal language rather than the model? Or is it a constant scenario of them having to confirm that the translation from one level is correct? Do they get involved in confirming that the logical model is correct? Or do we keep that away from them and we really just get them to agree or get them to sign off our understanding of what we've listened, what we've heard from them at the formal level?
Good question, Howard. So there are tools and techniques to do this process in a very high quality manner and traceable, and being able back to verbalize all of that and keep the lineage in order. But we didn't arrive at this point in time with so many tools and so many frameworks if there wasn't a need for all of those individual artifacts that we deal with. So you won't hear me say, yes, this is the way to go, and all the other stuff is just not sufficient enough. But what you will find now is probably, if as soon as you have a relational model somewhere, is that it usually is either in a file or printed in images or put on a wall even. But then you have this document next to these models that actually describe how to work with it.
Yeah.
Or document why, or who's responsible, or what are the stages in implementing this, or So there's a constant alignment of, okay, we have this relational model, but then we have to keep it in sync with the documentation on all these other levels too.
Yeah.
And you know, that's not even talking about we have an off-the-shelf product in the organization and we want to pull data out of it. How do you connect that with the relational models of your own made products? And how do you connect it back to the data warehousing? So there's always more than one technology and always more than one description. And having said that, there are certainly solutions that bring this level of integration within reach as well. I mean, having data catalog systems is a very helpful tool to at least know what data is there, and being able to annotate that. It doesn't bring you all the way around, but it'll at least it'll start building bridges towards other technologies and other tools. But the hard part is, so if you want to have it signed off, so you will, usually that works on at least having a business glossary on terms and definitions. So that at least that we know that the different departments agree upon, you know, this term it means this, so that if we report on that, we at least know that the business has signed it off. Doing that on a UML class diagram is usually pointless. At the same time, I've seen successful projects where they didn't have a relational modeling tool and they used UML class diagram to do the same thing. So all of those options are there. But my point here is that they all serve the goal of the business. So don't get blindsided by we can do anything in UML, or we can do anything with this tool, or even look for one tool that does it all. What you have to keep in mind is no matter what you do, that it connects in a meaningful manner.
Yeah.
And that requires a more holistic view on the organization, about our profession, and how to reach those goals. And we cannot dig in a hole and say, my tool is better, or this method is sufficient. There will always be something outside of our view that fills a need and provides a help. So aligning the real information is crucial. That's across the board.
And something that pick up from what you've just said when you reference the data catalog, and I know that we always have this scenario of top down versus bottom up versus hybrid, and we try to make use of the different ways of presenting what it is we're saying, what it is we're formalizing back to the business. So if that's in means of a data catalog that describes a certain business concept or an element of that, those are the type of avenues that we have to confirm our understanding.
Yeah, what I find it difficult, and you might have some experience in that, is a data catalog is simply a list of things that are in source systems. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it represents the information needs of the organization. It represents what was implemented from a perspective of whoever built that.
Yeah.
Based on there's the telephone game, based on requirements outside of my view, because I'm looking at a source system, and the design documents are even further away. So
the value of the catalog is that there will be some level of dictionary / categorization of the data in the catalog that wasn't visible on your screen, but it's certainly a way of when we discover the data, we need to put it into the library, and that certainly needs to be used and described in business terms or business concepts.
Right. Yeah, and then there will always be a need for another layer of so you will a business glossary or
Yeah.
a business-oriented information model. For the mere fact that if it's more than one source system and you're going to integrate those, what is the business supposed to sign off? An ETL mapping of some sort? And again, that doesn't communicate well. So it needs to come together from a perspective or a view of business glossary and data catalogs if you have various source systems. And it all needs to come together in a point where the business is able to read it and understand it and say, yeah, this is correct.
Right.
And data catalog is a very convenient way to present source data. And most tools allow you to annotate it, and but then it still needs to be harmonized, and it still needs to be pulled into definitions that the business recognizes. But by signing off the business mapping on all of that, they also need to understand the data catalog itself, because is that actually the data that in source system represented in this way, etc.
Right.
So the whole connective parts, all of those need to tie in with what is the actual information and what does it serve. It's not an easy task. We've dug ourselves into this hole, and now we have tons of tools and methods. And I just wanted to point at this holistic view that all of that serves information for the business, and it needs communication, and it needs integration.
Yep. Almost that canonical model of all of these different areas that bring all the things together that can be navigated.
That'd be nice. That'd be nice. And you mentioned canonical model. I heard that term before, and even in IT, we're these terms can kill us.
Yeah.
But as I understood it, a canonical model is actually the model for API and business messages over the bus. It's like, so yeah, that one too. But the overall information model, but that's in a way I've looking back and hearing stories it's almost impossible to have one canonical model. Yeah. Because there's so many different domains and everybody's communicating and information needs are different. And this is where the 4 quadrants of Ronald Dunlop come in as well. So we have this very rigid structure on information definitions, but then we have the pull side of it. It's like, I want to see the data in this context. I want to have the data aggregated in this way. And so the rigid definitions are still there, but then we have the display and reporting sides, which is dynamic. Yeah. And then the rigid definitions is usually a combination of different techniques, which are all, checked and signed off in a way that, that it makes sense.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Any other questions from the floor?
Very quiet.
Yeah.
Maybe, it might be a lot to digest. I find it with my own presentations sometimes that I visit is if it's something new, the brain needs processing time.
Yeah. Would it be something that many data modelers are not involved enough in reporting?
Yeah.
They have a different focus.
Is that a statement or a question?
It's both. I'm thinking.
Yes, very good, Martin. Very good. I think we always can do more. The question is it sufficient? That's something that you have to answer on a case-by-case situation.
Probably it's sufficient today, tomorrow it isn't.
Right, and it's I did this was an interesting perspective. I once did a getting things done training, And they said how to organize the way of managing tasks, and they had different archives. One for this, as soon as it's on this stack, you can do it within 5 minutes and it's done. And then you have this archive where you need to have it archived because you might want to look it up. And they spoke about it's not just it needs to be archived in a way that you can find it.
Yeah.
And when you say it's sufficient today, but it might not be in a year's time, so the sufficient needs to be documented in such a way that as soon as you realize it's insufficient, you can return to it and find the insufficient parts easily.
Mm.
So it's not about, okay, it's sufficient. It's more about, can I, in a year's time, find back what I did?
That is supposing that you already had it on the list.
Well, in many cases, there are concerns that we're not going to do that right now. And are these concerns documented in a way that we can find them back? And what would be the impact or potential impact or connecting scopes that involve this specific area that is not being handled? So these kind of approaches might help bridge the gap between sufficient now and realizing that it's not sufficient in the future.
Yeah.
I think Martin also brings up a good point there. If you did mention it earlier on, where everything we do is about decision support, that we're there to support decisions. And a lot of the times our data modeling doesn't deal with the decisions that are going to be required on the data that we're modeling. So we never really get to the end where we've built all these applications and things like that, and then it's almost that, well, do I have enough data and I do have enough understanding of making these decisions? Now, it's relatively easier when you're in a warehouse model, because that's where it should start. What are the questions and what are the answers that I need to be providing? But in an application point of view, there's some level of separation between what the application is modeling, a set of rules and definitions, but how is that helping us make decisions?
Yeah, those are good questions. That it's supposed to be the domain expert that can answer these.
But a lot of the times that's not what we're asking them. When we understand, I talk for myself, and I've been involved in both an object-oriented design and a use case. And I remember doing a lot of Eva Jacobson's use case, and it's just a case of, okay, this is what you want to do, and what decision do you want to make out of this? All of the stuff that we're doing, we really get there, because I suppose, if we think of the DMBOK and the summary, it's all about improving decision support. Right. That's why we keep the data. Otherwise, why do we have it?
And to add to the complexity of us and is if one of the slides says we look forward and we're looking towards tools, and it's blindsiding us in a way. The business, the people, the domain experts in the business are not influenced by the same mechanics. So they're doing the business, they're doing sales, and they want a dashboard. But they're also narrowing down their focus. Because they might have seen something, they have this intuition, this might help my work, but they don't know yet. Similar to us in IT, we may need this new tool, and we'll see how it evolves. And that's, but trying to figure out how to stay in the communication layers is the hard part.
Yeah.
And that really requires the vertical architecture to start with. Who took the decision? Who made this statement? Who wrote it down? Who made this table? At least being able to track the people that signed off every little step in there. So as soon as something turns up, we know where to tap into the communication layer to find the information that we designed the system for.
Right. And Mark Nolte just put an observation down there, and that's certainly something that catches us, is when we doing this work in a context where our understanding is evolving over time, and I'm now not just referring to that of the data professional, but also the business. That sort of by the time we're getting through all this process, that thinking has changed at the subject matter expert level and the understanding. So we have another level of disconnect.
Yep. Yep, that's life. But it's important to keep your eyes on the goal. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Correct.
when you know, if the culture map didn't come into our lives to understand, wait a minute, we're both speaking English, but there's a disconnect in the cultural level. When you say something is interesting, I think you're interested. But if you're actually meaning that it's a shitty idea, then we're not communicating the same language, even though we both speak English, right? So there's
semantics is
yeah. This is not just semantics. Is it communicated enough so you understand the true intention?
Yeah.
This is the hard part. I mean, I find it in fact-oriented modeling too, is that, you know, relational modeling, as soon as I draw the table customer, everybody can agree, but it's just nebulous as hell.
Yeah.
And this is what we all do. This is the political system that designs laws. You know, we can't quite figure it out, but if we put it in these words, everybody agrees. But is it clear and unambiguous? Not always. Yeah. And we as humans do that to reach consensus. Where consensus is reached through ambiguity, well, you know, it might work today until it doesn't. And then we need to go back to the drawing board, and then we have to realize, wait a minute, who signed this off, and who is disagreeing, and who do we need to contact to clear this up?
Right.
Which requires a level of detail and documentation on these things that is not many tools provide that kind of tracing, that kind of lineage.
That vertical lineage, yeah. Yeah, we tend to do the horizontal lineage, but not always.
No, we have separate systems. We have a Word document that accompanies the files, and we have a ticketing system with Jira that has links to something else, and then we have to go find it. We have emails that get lost because it's unstructured text with full of decisions. We have meetings minutes, and the same applies to design process and requirements gathering process, but it also applies to actually working with data in the organization itself. And I've seen it with immigration that after 3 months of struggling to get immigration permits, we actually ended up at a desk, and this person says, well, why didn't you fill in the checkbox in the form on page 7? And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. He's like, don't worry, I'll get it. So he sits behind his terminal, opens up this PDF file that was scanned by the mailroom, and he goes to page 7, and he points at the checkbox, and he says, oh, you did check it. So there was a categorization error at the mailroom.
Yeah.
But the system was designed that nobody could change the status of the documents. Yeah. So there you go. So the actual communication about the data is like, wait a minute, I made a typo. Yeah, but the workflow doesn't permit me with this level to actually amend the data. But I don't have any means to communicate about the error either. So not only So it applies to our own profession, but it applies to anyone's profession. If it's not integrated and supportive of what do you need to do your job right, something goes wrong.
Yeah, it sort of reminds me of that discussion that Barry Devlin had his book on business unintelligence, where he explains that of the gap between information and data, what we've been able to capture in the database that represents the information that was provided to the business at that point in time, there's missing elements, similar to sort of what you've referred to now, where whilst it was capturing the document with that, the system sort of lost that in that element.
Right. Yeah, and it's not hard to think about these problems in the sense of, you know, even if I don't have the authorization level to actually amend the data myself, if the system would allow me to make that annotation to it and somebody with the correct level would be notified and could take action, then we have a double cutting knife, because it allows me to do my work. It allows me to do the work for the client better. And we have full lineage on who changes the data, etc., etc. So the whole system development is too limited to and too focused on non-changing data.
Yeah.
And again, try to design that in a relational model, a UML model, a data warehouse. And it boils down to, are we providing information and are we supporting communication?
Right.
We only have a last status.
Yes, in this system we do, unfortunately.
Are you referring to temporal, Martin, when you
Yes. Many software systems have only the last status available, and they really destroy history.
Yes.
Yeah. Restate it,
which is quite amazing.
Yeah. And therefore it's not supporting people.
Yeah.
It's not, because if I have a receipt and I have to bring it to my accountant, I actually have a physical copy. I have the original and I send it in or not, and I have full tracing on. So in performing my task for my accountant, I can do my work because it's manual labor. But as soon as I scan it and it allows me to do one copy, I'm lost. It's this rigid structure. But again, I'm approaching it from a holistic view. How should it work, or how could it work, versus what are we doing now in our profession? And we're blindsided by the things that we do because it's not serving the real purpose. We're all drilling holes and making drill sets.
Right. Excellent, Marco. Thank you very much. I don't know, is there any other observations? I suppose one.
And if anyone has questions after digesting all of this, or nightmares tonight, please.
I'm thinking about how to write up the system for tomorrow, how to write up the comments. But yeah, certainly if you'd love to chat about it, we'd love to engage when we present the recording. And if we can keep talking and keep communicating, we have to find ways of improving that communication.
I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah. Guys, thanks everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day. Mark, I hope you have a great day and finish off your work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye, Mark. Bye now.
Marco, thank you very much for your presentation. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It was a joy. I will see you sometime in the future.
Thank you very much, sir. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.